Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this Microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Biographical Encyclopedia Volume 1, and this article is entitled Hyrum, Smith, Hyrum. So Hyrum Smith. So I have done one on Hyrum M. Smith, and that was a full-blown, regular article from Lives of Our Leaders, I believe. But this is the original. This is the brother of Joseph Smith, and I think most of us know a little bit about him. He was the older brother of Joseph Smith, and he was, not the first, but he was one of the first presiding patriarchs. I believe his father was the first, Joseph Smith Sr., and most people, in the church, it was considered a kind of a tradition to have the presiding patriarch be a descendant of his, by the way. I don't know if they're going to mention that in this article. Joseph F. Smith was his son, yeah, and as well as John Smith, who became presiding patriarch as well. And he had, I think, 6 children or something like that, and of the 2 of them. And he had been married a couple times. He was first married to Jerusha, I believe is his wife's name, and then later on he was married to Mercy Fielding or Mary Fielding. I think both. If I'm not mistaken, he was the polygamous husband of both. But I believe Mary Fielding was his second wife after Jerusha, yeah? So he had some children with Jerusha and with Mary Fielding, because Mary Fielding was the mother of Joseph F. Smith, and okay, that's why she called him Joseph F., is because he wasn't actually named after Joseph Smith, he was named after Joseph Fielding, yeah? Who was Mary's father, I believe. Anyways, that's kind of a neither here nor there, but so Hyrum was very, very loyal to Joseph Smith. He always believed his story, and also he followed him into death. He and Joseph died together. So most people are aware of him, but not quite as much as Joseph Smith himself. So anyway, let's see what the article has to say. It's really short, which surprises me. I mean, his life was fairly eventful, but apparently not much needs to be said about it. So let's take a look. Smith, Hyrum, second counselor to President Joseph Smith from 1837 to 1841, was the second son of Joseph Smith and Lucy Mack, and was born February 9th, 1800, at Tunbridge, Vermont, and removed with his father's family to Western New York when about 19 years old. He married Jerusha Barden at Manchester, New York, November 2nd, 1826, by whom he had 6 children. Okay, so my bad. I thought he had 6 children total, but apparently he had 6 children with his first wife, yeah? And that means that he had more than 6 total. Okay, Lovina, Mary, John, Hyrum, Jerusha, and Sarah. So there's John Smith. That was his oldest son, who later became presiding patriarch, who we will talk about if we haven't yet. I think we have, actually, but I'll double check before I'm sure. He became a widower October 13th, 1837, while absent at Far West, Missouri, and married Mary Fielding the same year, by whom he had 2 children, Joseph F. and Martha. Yeah, like his brother Joseph, Hyrum spent his early years in agricultural labors, and nothing of particular note characterized that period of his life. He speedily became a believer in Joseph's mission, and by him was baptized in Seneca Lake in June 1829. He was one of the 8 persons permitted to view the plates from which the Book of Mormon was translated, and his name is prefixed to it as a witness, one of the 8 witnesses, yes. November 7th, 1837, at a conference assembled in Far West, Missouri, he was appointed second counselor to President Joseph Smith, instead of Frederick G. Williams, who was rejected. January 19th, 1841, he was called by revelation to take the office of patriarch to the whole church, of which he had been appointed by his deceased father, by blessing and also by birthright, and was likewise appointed a prophet, seer, and a revelator. He was personally connected with many of the principal events of the church up to the time of his death. and in the various offices he filled, he won the love and esteem of all persons. In the revelation calling him to be the chief patriarch, the Lord thus spoke of him, "Blessed is my servant Hyrum Smith, for I, the Lord, love him, because of the integrity of his heart, and because he loveth that which is right before me, saith the Lord." Doctrine and Covenants 124:15. He was tenderly attached to his brother Joseph, whom he never left more than 6 months at one time, during their lifetime. He was arrested with him at Far West, Missouri, and imprisoned with him at Liberty, and finally spilt his blood with him in Carthage, Illinois, June 27, 1844. In this catastrophe he fell first, exclaiming, "I am a dead man," and Joseph responding, "Oh, dear brother Hyrum." In the Times and Seasons we find the following beautiful eulogy. "He lived so far beyond the ordinary walk of man that even the tongue of the vilest slanderer could not touch his reputation. He lived godly, and he died godly, and his murderers will yet have to confess that it will have been better for them to have a millstone tied to them and have been cast into the depths of the sea, and remain there while eternity goes and eternity comes, than to have robbed that noble man of heaven of his life." At his death he held various military and civil offices in the Nauvoo Legion and in the municipality. For further particulars, see Sketch of Joseph Smith Jr. in early church publications generally. Yeah. So they're kind of deferring the rest of his story, basically, which I think is a little sad. I mean, they should have mentioned it. But hey, that's so short, though. Like, that's all they have to say. Alright, let's take a look. Alright, let's see what Wikipedia has to say. Hyrum Smith, February 9th, 1800 to June 27th, 1844, was an American religious leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the original Church of the Latter-day Saint movement. He was the older brother of the movement's founder, Joseph Smith, and was killed with his brother at Carthage jail, where they were being held awaiting trial. I think that's pretty well known, yeah? Early life. Hyrum Smith was born in Tunbridge, Vermont, the second son of Joseph Smith Sr. and Lucy Mack Smith. Between the ages of 12 and 15, Smith briefly attended Moore's Charity School on the campus of Dartmouth College, while his family lived nearby in Lebanon, New Hampshire. That's interesting. See, I didn't know that about him. I love when I find out little random tidbits that I had never knew before. Church service. Smith was a close advisor and confidant to his brother Joseph, as the latter produced the Book of Mormon and established the Church of Christ. In June 1829, Smith was baptized in Seneca Lake, New York. He was one of the 8 witnesses who swore to the reality of the set of golden plates inscribed with the Book of Mormon. He also said he saw the angel Moroni. When the Church of Christ was organized on April 6, 1830, 6 men signed their names as charter members. At the age of 30, Hyrum Smith was the oldest of the 6. Smith served as presiding officer of a church branch in Colesville, New York, and was one of the first Latter-day Saint missionaries in the surrounding area. All makes sense so far. As the church headquarters and membership moved west, Smith and his family relocated. In 1831, he established a home in Kirtland, Ohio. During his residence there, he served as foreman of the quarry, providing stone for the Kirtland Temple. Between 1831 and 1833, he served proselytizing missions to Missouri and Ohio. In 1834, under the direction of Joseph Smith, he recruited members for a militia, Zion's Camp, and traveled with the group to the aid of the Latter-day Saints in Missouri. He was appointed second counselor in the church's first presidency in November 1837. In 1838 and 1839, Hyrum, Joseph, and 3 other church leaders shared a jail cell in Liberty, Missouri, while awaiting trial. I mean, these are all things that we heard about already, yeah? After relocating to Nauvoo, Illinois, Smith became the church's presiding patriarch, a position first held by his father, Joseph Smith Sr. He also replaced Oliver Cowdery as assistant president of the church. In this capacity, Smith acted as president of the church in Joseph's absence, and was designated to be Joseph's successor if he were killed or incapacitated. I had heard about this. That was the big debate between Sidney Rigdon and Brigham Young, because Brigham Young even said this. He said, "Did Joseph Smith choose a successor?" Yes, he did. And who was it? It was Hyrum. The problem was that Hyrum was killed with him, therefore it wasn't able to happen. So, Hyrum was never leading the church. In fact, technically he died just before Joseph did. Yeah. It's interesting. So if you didn't know that, that is true. Joseph Smith did choose a successor, but it wasn't Sidney Rigdon. It was Hyrum Smith. And therefore, Brigham Young felt that in the absence of the chosen successor, then the Quorum of the 12 was responsible for the church. And he also defended this position by claiming that Joseph Smith had given the Quorum of the 12 all of the authority of the First Presidency. That the Quorum together, as the 12 together, had the same authority as the First Presidency. And that same thing is true of the 70s. If all of the 70s came together, then they would have the same authority as the 12. Or all of the 12, the same authority as the First Presidency. And that's how he defended the right of the Quorum of the 12 to continue presiding over the church. So I hope that makes sense to you. But this is actually true. This is true, and I can show you where that is as well. In the conference following Joseph Smith's martyrdom in October of 1844. So we'll take a look at that if you would like to see it. I think that that's relevant. Yeah, but he actually did. He chose Hyrum Smith to be his successor. Although Hyrum Smith was never explicitly ordained to the priesthood office of apostle, his appointment as assistant president may have included such authority. Yeah, but the thing is, First Presidency doesn't require that you be an apostle. Like, there have been several members of the First Presidency who have not been apostles. So. When warned of possible danger, Joseph urged Hyrum and his family to flee to Cincinnati, Ohio. Hyrum refused, and in 1844 traveled with Joseph to Carthage, Illinois, where both were charged with riot and treason. Joseph, Hyrum, and John Taylor and Willard Richards were held awaiting a trial in Carthage. On June 27, 1844, the building was attacked by a mob of between 60 and 200 men. Yeah, they don't know the exact number. While attempting to barricade the door to prevent the mob from entering, Hyrum was shot in the face on the left side of his nose. After staggering back, another ball fired through the window struck him in the back, passed through his body, and struck his watch in his vest pocket. Wait a second. It struck his watch in his vest pocket. No, they're talking about John Taylor. Yeah? Because the shot that struck his watch was John Taylor's. It wasn't Hyrum's. Okay, that's a mistake. I'm pretty sure that's incorrect. As Hyrum Smith fell to the floor, he exclaimed, "I am a dead man," as he died. Taylor was struck by several bullets, but survived with the help of Richards. Yeah, I've always said that. Everybody talks about how miraculous it was that his watch stopped the bullet, but to be honest, you forget that Willard Richards was unharmed. He wasn't shot at all by the mob. He was stuck behind the door, squished a little bit, but he was fine. And you forget that he was a doctor. And so right after the mob left, he would have come out to see if he could help. He would have found Joseph and Hyrum both dead beyond helping, and he would have gone to John Taylor, who was still alive, and probably saved his life. A lot of people forget that. He was in the room with a doctor, Willard Richards was a medical doctor. All right, moving on. I'm sorry. That's just a personal pet peeve. People forget his role in saving John Taylor's life. Willard Richards saved John Taylor's life that day. I am convinced. All right. Joseph was hit by at least 2 shots, exclaimed, "O Lord, my God," and fell through a second-story window to the ground, where he was shot again. Because of his position as assistant president of the church, it is likely that Smith would have succeeded Joseph and become the next president of the church had he outlived his brother. Yeah, I agree. Political involvement. Smith was a member of the Nauvoo City Council. At the time of his death, Smith was an independent candidate for the Illinois state legislature. I think that's slightly irrelevant. I don't think it's important, personally, because that wasn't where his life's work really was. He didn't put emphasis on it during his life, so I don't feel like it's that important. Wives and children. On the 2nd of November, 1826, in Manchester, New York, he married Jerusha Barden, 1805 to 1837. They had 6 children together. 1837. Ooh. Oh, goodness. She must have died in childbirth. Because her youngest was born the 2nd of October, 1837, so that she must have died right after that, yeah. All right. Children. Lovina Smith was born 16 September 1827, died 8 October 1876. And Mary had a nice long life, yeah. Who married Lauren Walker. Mary Smith was born 27 June 1829 and died 29th of May 1832. Ooh, that was very young. 3 years old? Not quite 3, 2 3/4. John Smith, he was the presiding patriarch, born 22nd September 1832 to 6 November 1911. Yeah, he lived forever. He had such a long life. It was so funny because you kept being like, and Patriarch John Smith, Presiding Patriarch John Smith, Presiding Patriarch John Smith. It's like, wow, like he served something ridiculous like 50 years as a presiding patriarch, because he served from, I believe it was 1856 or 57, something like that, all the way up to 1911 when he finally died. Like, that's such a long time. And then Hyrum Smith Jr., yeah, was born 27 April 1834 to the 21st of September 1841. Okay, so he didn't live long either. 7 years old. Gosh. Jerusha Smith, 13 January 1836 to 27 June 1912. She lived a long time too. Sarah Smith, 2 October 1837, who probably ended the life of her mother, unfortunately. Well, through her birth. Her birth ended her mother's life. Not her herself. And died 6 November 1876, who married Charles Emerson Griffin. I mean, she lived to adulthood. That's not a long life, though. On 24 December 1837, in Kirtland, Ohio, he married Mary Fielding Smith, 1801 to 1852. They had 2 children, Joseph F. Smith, born 13 November 1838 to 19 November 1918, who president of the church. Martha Ann Smith, 14 May 1841 to 9 October 1923. She also lived a long life. Look at all those people living long lives. Geez, they had good genes. In August 1843, he married and was sealed to 2 plural wives. Mercy Fielding Thompson, that's what I said, widow of Robert B. Thompson and sister to Hyrum's wife Mary, and Catherine Phillips. So he did have plural wives, but he was only married to 3 before his death. That's plenty, but I'm just saying, you know. Descendants. Smith's descendants have played significant roles in the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church. Yep. Joseph F. Smith, his son by Mary Fielding Smith, served as LDS Church president from 1901 to 1918. His grandson, Joseph Fielding Smith, also served as president of the church from 1970 to 1972. His eldest son, John Smith, John Smith served as the church's presiding patriarch from 1855 to 1911. Look at how long he served. That's more than 50 years. That's like 60. Like, that's crazy. 56? Yes? 56 years. Can you imagine? John Smith's descendants held this position from 1912 to 1932, and from 1942 to 1979, when the office was effectually discontinued and the incumbent Eldred G. Smith was given the title Patriarch Emeritus. M. Russell Ballard, who was the acting president of the Quorum of the 12 of the LDS Church, was also a direct descendant of Smith. I did hear about that. In 1918, Smith's descendants erected a monument to him in Salt Lake City Cemetery. Good. In 2000, it was estimated that Smith has over 31,000 living descendants. Can you imagine? Although I believe that just from the descendants of Joseph S. Smith alone, probably is half of them. Because he had so many kids. I think he had something like 80 kids or something. Oh gosh, I don't know the exact number, but they didn't mention some of them that I felt like were important. Hyrum M. Smith was his grandson, son of Joseph F. Smith, was also an apostle. He's one of my favorite apostles to talk about because he's so not well known, but his life was so significant. It makes me not understand how people don't know about him, you know? Elder G. Smith, they mentioned. There was a Joseph Fielding Smith who was the son of Hyrum M. Smith, not the same as the president of the church. He was presiding patriarch, and he was presiding patriarch for not very long, but still, that's significant as well. Also a descendant. And, like, there's just so many. 31,000 descendants. Can you believe that? That's crazy. See also Latter-day Saint martyrs. Yeah. I believe he fits the bill. Yeah. As well as his brother. But no, I feel like Hyrum Smith isn't spoken of enough. Like, even though he's spoken of, he's not spoken of as much as Joseph. In, like, it's just that his name is always connected to Joseph directly. Like, you know, you don't really see people looking at Hyrum and being like, you know, independent of Joseph, he was quite significant. People just think of him as kind of the, you know, the other half of Joseph Smith. But he's not. He's his own independent person, and I feel like it was very significant that he was so faithful, you know? I think of him as being a very faithful person. And he would have been president of the church had he not been killed in the same time as Joseph Smith himself. And I'm going to look that up real quick. Conference minutes, October 1844. I am this confident in it. I'm just going to do a quick search for the word Hyrum. Yeah. Okay, this is a talk given by Brigham Young. Hang on, let me get the details of the talk. Okay, so this is at the beginning of the October 1844 conference given in Nauvoo on October 6, 1844. Some instructions are given by Elder Pratt, and then when President Young, having arrived, arose to lay before the brethren the matters to be attended to during the conference. Okay, now I'm skipping down to the bottom of this talk. Let's see. It is the test of our fellowship to believe and confess that Joseph lived and died a prophet of God in good standing, and I don't want anyone to fellowship the 12 who says that Joseph is fallen. If you don't know whose right it is to give revelations, I will tell you. It is I. There never has a man stood between Joseph and the 12, and unless we apostatize, there never will. If Hyrum had lived, he would not have stood between Joseph and the 12. He would have stood for Joseph. Did Joseph ordain any man to take his place? He did. Who was it? It was Hyrum. But Hyrum fell a martyr before Joseph did. If Hyrum had lived, he would have acted for Joseph. And then when he had gone up, the 12 would have sat down at Joseph's right hand and Hyrum on the left hand. The Bible says God hath set in the church first apostles, then comes prophets. Afterwards becomes the keys and power of the apostleship are greater than that of the prophets. Sidney Rigdon cannot hold the keys without Joseph. If he had held the keys with Joseph and been faithful, he would have been with us. If the 12 do not apostatize, they carry the keys of this kingdom wherever they go. He concluded by requesting all the brethren to tarry with us until all the business is through. So this is probably one of the most famous talks by Brigham Young. I mean, that talk that he gave right after the martyrdom, this is the first conference after the martyrdom, when he stood up and he said, the 12 apostles are able to run the church. And so he says, if you don't know whose right it is to give revelations, I will tell you. It is I. Yeah? Like, that's a really powerful statement. Yeah? And I love that. He said, did Joseph ordain any man to take his place? He did. Who was it? It was Hyrum. But Hyrum fell a martyr before Joseph did. And, like, this is just very, very clear that Hyrum Smith was chosen to take Joseph's place, to be his successor. It's just that he never had a chance to do it. So I believe that Hyrum Smith is probably, you know, like I said, one of the not talked about enough people, of all people in the church. You know, we talk a lot about Joseph Smith, and we talk about John Taylor and Wilford Woodruff, you know, but we don't really talk enough about Hyrum. I really don't think we do. Anyways, that's my opinion. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below, and let me know what you think. I'm always interested in what other people think. And if you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And I hope to see you in the next video.